it's clearly everything we do, whether we're hiring, looking after people from an HR perspective, everything we do is all about culture. So it is the beginning, the middle, and the end. I utterly appreciate that probably 95%, two people I definitely know who homegrown hotels are, but I assume that most people don't know who we are within the business. So I've just kind of got a short vid which kind of highlights who we are, what it is we do, and kind of why it is we do it. So we are a group of 6 boutique hotel companies across the south coast. Opened up one this year in Kent, and we will be shortly opening up number 7 in Cornwall at kind of April, May of next year. So the whole point, ethos of the business is around the kitchen garden. Each hotel has a kitchen garden, 25-mile menu, so everything is very local, very sustainable, and it is just around the circumference, that 25-mile menu of that hotel. So everything is very local, including your recruiter market being extremely local as well. Before I kind of talk about homegrown, the Pig Hotels a bit later on, I just thought I'd do a quick bit of background on me. So I've done 20 years of HR. I started off as an HR administrator for Compass Group, which was obviously an enormous multinational kind of business. I then moved from there to Pizza Express, which when I left was 425 restaurants, around about 10,000 people. Made a very different move to Byron back in the day, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. A few other kind of restaurant businesses. I did a little bit of my own consultancy gig for about a year, and then I got a phone call about this business, which one it is I kind of visited, and you start to unpick it. Just, I couldn't say no to. It was an incredible opportunity. So then, finally here with the Pigs and Limewood Group. I think what I've seen in my experience through all of that time is just almost how culture has sort of changed and shifted. And I think from our position as HR people, as recruiters, it's about kind of understanding and sort of understanding that shift, because it's obviously totally changing the market in which we're kind of all operating in. My kind of time at Byron was properly back in the day. I officially joined at Restaurant 18, although I'd been doing a little bit of work with the business previously. And to put it into a market context, Meat Liquor were telling people who complained about their hamburgers to go fuck themselves. Paddy and Bun Joe was still doing pop-ups in pubs. And a little-known hamburger restaurant called Honest Burgers had just opened up restaurant number 2. How things have changed, right? So kind of at that time, it was a super sort of different business. We were expanding. I mean, in 1 month, we opened up three restaurants in a month, which was a bit of a disaster. But what was really, really clear and really, really evident within the business, which is why it is I wanted to join it, was because the cultural part of that business was so incredibly strong. It's an owner-founder business. I don't know anybody who works for owner-founder businesses in the room. The majority. What I tend to find is that the owner-founder of the business is the business. If you don't understand the founder, you don't understand the business. And in my experience back in the day, Tom was Byron, Byron was Tom. You couldn't separate the two. So if you didn't spend any time trying to unpick him, his brain, how he worked, you didn't understand how the business worked, and exactly the same with the pigs. The pig group is Robin Hudson. If you don't understand Robin, you don't understand the business. So what became super evident was, in order to understand the culture, I had to understand what was going on in his brain and spend a disproportionate amount of my life in restaurants, which was probably what it is at the time. I put on about 3 stone. So spending a lot of time in restaurants and spending a lot of time just trying to set out what it meant. You know, we were able to kind of capture and set out what it is we were trying to do. The whole purpose in Byron was to do it properly. Whatever it is you do, do it properly. All it is we do is make a hamburger, so do one thing, do that properly. Out of doing it properly, there were kind of 5 key values associated with that. Smile, know your shit, execute flawlessly, help your mates and charm them. And sitting underneath all of those, we were able to kind of capture, a bit like that was on screen before, what are the behaviors that sit underneath each of those values to each person within the organization. So an idiot like me sitting in the office had one set of behaviors that it is I was supposed to kind of adhere to and do. And if you're a waiter in a restaurant, then you had, albeit completely targeted values, a completely different set of behaviors, because we fundamentally did different things within the business. We were then able to stick that onto an appraisal because, again, like it's been said before, you know, we weren't necessarily interested in appraising anybody against what it is they were doing, what their objectives were. It was kind of more about how it is they were doing it that was more important. You could do it. You could end up with a terrible piece of work, but if you ended up going about it in the right kind of way, then you're doing it for the right reasons, and that's a good job in itself. So we put together incredible kind of performance reviews with brilliant kind of really cool language. So if you were doing something well, that was well done. If you were doing it okay, it was medium. If it was doing it a little bit less than medium, it was medium rare. And if you weren't doing it very well at all, then it was rare. So you had the language kind of flowing all the way through. And from a recruitment perspective, anybody who was assistant restaurant manager and up within the business had to go through our one cultural gatekeeper. Made recruitment a little bit slow at times, but everybody had to go and be funneled into this guy. He was our first ever general manager. He was the general manager for High Street Kensington, so the number 1. And he got to look over, agree or disagree with you as to whether that person was good enough to come into the business. So that was all about channeling culture. He knew it. He bled medium. That's what it is we used to say. If you bleed medium, then you're in, and if you don't, then you don't. Because those are the behaviours, and that was exactly what it is we wanted to see within the business. I think why did we do that? We did that because when you're rolling out loads and loads of restaurants, you need to make sure, because it was the only reason I got to sleep at night, was that when each of those restaurants opened, you could walk in, the boss could walk in, the owner could walk in, and know that it felt right to the feelings versus the processy sort of stuff. It is all about how that restaurant feels when you walk in, and you had to codify what that meant so that when people walked in, you knew that was the right behaviour that was going on. Which sounds quite sort of processy, but it was only processy to a point. And I think for me, when it comes to culture, and I guess our jobs, mine, yours, whoever it is you are, from an HR perspective or recruitment perspective within the business, it's not about putting more in, it's not about putting more process in, it's not about making things more complicated, it's all about trying to whip out as much crap and shit as possible so that the process to get from A to B is as simple as it possibly can be. That's what we're here to do. Everybody can put in really complex process. I can remember, because I had quite a big corporate background before I joined, I had a 3-page social media policy that I very proudly presented to my boss. He got halfway through the first page, literally threw it back at me and said, "What the fuck is this?" That sort of threw me slightly, not necessarily used to the entrepreneurial world just then. And he's just asked me the simple question, "What the fuck do you want this document to say?" And I said, "All I want it to say is that I want everybody who's posting stuff online to be responsible for it." He said, "Well, just say that." So I took my 3-page document and I literally wrote that. That was a social media policy. And that to me was one of those moments that you realise that you're, from an HR perspective, you've moved from really corporate HR to a point where you have to rely on culture to underpin the stuff that doesn't exist. Because it's not about writing a 3-page policy, it's about making sure people are responsible for what it is they do, and that's it. And then you rely on the culture to back up everything else. You have to stand away. And if you don't have a strong culture within your business, it all goes to shit, and you need to write a 3-page policy about why it is you need a social media, what happens when it is you do it wrong, you're going to get sacked, all hell and damnation is going to happen, because, in my humble opinion, you have a very weak culture in the business. You just have to tell people what to do. The more you have to tell people, the less they're going to think for themselves, the worse your culture is going to be. So, to me, that was one of those big, I can remember the meeting very well, one of those big life lessons when it kind of came to working in a business with a really, really strong culture. How does that sort of work now where it is I am, and what it is, again, I've kind of observed where we are, is that approach to structuring culture and putting in those values and behaviours for us doesn't work, which was a bit of a mind job to get my head around, because where it is I've worked in the past, it's always worked. That's what it is you do, that's what the textbooks tell you. And it doesn't work for us, and so I do a lot of travelling in my car, around about sometimes 5 hours a day. So I have a lot of time to think all on my own. My team hate me because when it is I get to where it is I go, I write them emails. And I've been thinking, why is it that this doesn't work? It's supposed to work, and it doesn't work because I think the whole cultural thing has shifted from that beautiful, quite tight framework that we all know and love, and trust me, I loved my lovely little framework back in the day. And it's probably changed to being much more principle-led. We work on broad principles at the Pig. We very rarely, if ever, tell people what to do. They know that they have to have a spirit of generosity, that they have to deliver something that guests think is great, so we call it the extra 5%, and that you have to think like a guest. So saying yes is the obvious thing to say. Saying no, you need to go and find someone, tell them why it is you can't do it. For them to say you can't do that, you're absolutely right to go back and tell the guest that it's a no. Everything's a default yes. We're a hotel, for fuck's sake, we can do whatever we want. We can cook whatever we want, there's loads of stuff that we can do, so it should never be a no. So you have a whole group of people out there with just guiding principles, no job descriptions, which I was just talking to Ollie about. There's no job descriptions within the business. There are a lot of moving parts in a hotel. We've got kitchen gardeners doing kitchen stuff. We've got housekeepers doing housekeeping stuff. The guys in the kitchen deliver all the food. They've just picked it that morning into the kitchen. The guys then cook all of that sort of stuff. If by lunchtime they've used everything that they picked up before for lunchtime, you then have to change the menu because you don't have it anymore, and you can't just ring up and go down to Tesco's to get it because it doesn't exist in Tesco's. It's a super complex business. So trying to put in place process for that is frankly impossible, so we're just not going to bother. So here are some guiding principles about what it is you should do. And it broadly works 90%. 80% of the time it absolutely works. Sometimes we screw stuff up. Great examples of, and there are thousands, one always springs to mind. 2 guests went into the garden. One of the guests was telling one of the kitchen gardeners, who, if you grab one of the kitchen gardeners, they'll talk to you all day about gardening. And she highlighted that they were growing her favourite plant. She could never grow it at home. When they checked out, there was a bag in reception with a cutting of the plant with the instructions on how to plant it, look after it, so that she then took that home and did that. That's the extra 5%. You can't write that shit down. You can't tell him that's what it is he was supposed to do. That was just him doing what he thought he should do in the spirit of generosity and for the extra 5%. I won't go through the examples when it goes wrong. Luckily, they're much fewer. And more often than not, it's not that people have done wrong, they've just batted average. They've just not done it. People have left and gone, yeah, it was good, it was okay. And that's a disaster. It can't just be okay, it's got to be something that's better than that. So I think from a cultural perspective, the frameworks have just expanded. You've got Gen X, Gen Y, not Gen X, they're old like me. Gen Y, Gen Z coming into our business. They need space. They want to do more. So trying to prescribe stuff doesn't work. So you need to give people the guiding principles for them to kind of step back and do what it is they want to do, hopefully with a safe enough framework, because you've got a strong culture, that when it is they do stuff wrong, which they will, it's not a complete disaster. You can sweep it all up, and everyone kind of goes on with the rest of their day. So I think that's from a cultural perspective one of the big things for me. 2 minutes. Okay. So so then, as recruitment people and HR people, what should we be doing? In my humble opinion, I think if you're spending 80% of your time in your office, something's wrong. The only way you understand your culture is to sit in your restaurants, assuming you're all in restaurants. Sit in your restaurants to understand who are the people that are your culture. What are they? It's not what it is you think, it's what sits in front of you, that's what it is. So that's what it is you should be doing. You should only be recruiting kind of what we would call 7, 8 and 9s. So you only have 1 10 in any business. It's usually the founder, well in my experience it's only the founder. He's your 10, he kind of gets it, he sets the tone, he understands how it all works, and you need to unpick their brain in order to understand what the business is. You're never going to be able to recruit another 10. You can recruit 7, 8 and 9s. Your 9s are people that bleed medium in a Byron context, but totally understand your business. And your 7s and 8s are people that totally get it, but are just never going to be your 8s and 9s. If you're recruiting anybody less than 7, you're wasting your time only recruiting 7, 8 and 9s within your business, because you're never going to find another 10. So in a short term, that's what it is we should be doing. In a long term, and I'm doing this really, really quick, is collaboration. So something that we are starting within Homegrown and with the Linewood Group is that the culture of hospitality needs to change. It's why it is we're all here, because we're really fucking bored of listening to the same stuff. So the only way that's going to change is from events like this, and also us all, instead of fighting against each other for the same people, coming together and using the same people within all of our businesses. We partner up with businesses, and our people leave us, our chefs, get your fucking head around this, our chefs leave us, we give them to other people knowing they're never going to come back. It's the right move for them because they've done our time with us. They fucking love us because we've made that introduction. Best PR you'll ever get, but you've given a chef away. It sucks to be you, right? But they love you. And so does hospitality, because now they've grown as a chef or a front of house person or whatever it is. We have to change how we are using our culture within hospitality, because it helps us as businesses individually. That person I know is going to sell the dream about my business, our business, to anybody in hospitality. It then enhances the culture, because the great skills that people learn with us get transferred over to there, and then and again and again and again. And then it helps the industry as a whole, because we can't teach everybody everything. You guys can't teach everybody everything, but collectively we all do incredibly cool stuff. And sharing people around the industry means that we get better as an industry, so that's how it is we probably need to change our culture for the future, because culture is everything.